Every great marketer has been faced with this moment, an opportunity to exhibit bravery in the midst of uncertainty, or to take a risk on something they truly believed in. The Brave Marketer podcast features today's most progressive marketers and uncovers the brave marketing moments that have shaped their careers and the brands they've influenced. Hosted by Brave Software and Never Stop Marketing, and me, your host, Donnie DeVoren. Together we'll discover the decision-making process and mindset work that led to their success. You are listening to the third episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. We're just a few episodes into our first season, and it's great to have you here. Last week, we chatted with Duncan Bird, the VP of Brand Marketing and Digital at Fiverr, about their decision to invest in the Super Bowl ad during this past year's game. This week, we're taking a big shift into the death of the third-party cookie, where I got to interview John Marshall, Head of North American Media Activation at HP. Before I tell you more about John, though, I'd like to highlight our own Brave Pick of the Week, which is Canada Dry Ginger Ale. They ran on our sponsored image unit, and we received so many comments on their strikingly creative ad, Not Your Grandma's Ginger Ale. This was part of a larger campaign with a group of IPG brands that are currently testing Brave's ad platform. Now, for this week's episode, you'll meet John Marshall. John is the North America lead at HP for their in-house media agency, ZG. Over the past 6 years at HP, he's helped establish an HP-owned advertising stack, an in-house media agency, as well as standard and best practices for digital advertising. His current emphasis is working toward future-proofing HP's digital media practice as we navigate through the death of the third-party cookie. This podcast is brought to you by Brave, a privacy-respecting browser that actually rewards you for your attention. A fun fact about Brave is that it loads pages 3 times faster than other browsers such as Chrome and Firefox. Now, with no further ado, let's hear from John. John, thanks for coming on to our podcast, The Brave Marketer. We're so happy to have you here today. I'd like to start the conversation about the death of the third-party cookies. Obviously, here at Brave, we are a browser that has no third-party cookies at all. But, I'd love to hear how this subject matter came up for you and how you guys are solving it in the greater media landscape right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. It is the hot topic today, and definitely within HP. We've had our eye on this for a while, and even your own browser came up out of this trend. I think at the root of it is consumer privacy and giving consumers choice over their data, how it's used. To be honest, it's long overdue. And I think that's been a wind of change blowing for a while. And knowing that as more and more people just became more aware of their privacy and consent, I think we've already seen the third-party cookie erode in its value. There's been a lot of changes to performance, changes to things like just matching identities between partners. It's something that's been on our mind. We started doing some research around it, a little more investigation to understand the impact, and it's real. Looking forward to 2022, hopefully we'll be relatively prepared. I think there's some unknowns depending on what happens with Chrome, what happens with some of the key technology partners in the space, and then also how consumers react to the different alternatives. There's a lot of unknowns and uncertainty at this point, but I think as a marketer, we're trying to do our best to prepare, to explore different models and try to understand what is possible and how it's going to change how we look at performance.
So yeah, obviously Chrome removing third-party cookies is a big one. What are some of the examples that you've seen where you're saying it's harder to match? You've already seen some deprecating of the third-party cookie. Where have you seen that happening right now?
I've seen it everywhere. I've seen it with every technology partner that we've used in the last couple of years. When we take an audience and try to onboard it as a cookie and then match that cookie to several other cookies, you end up with a jumbled mess. And I think there's probably a modicum of accuracy in there, but not as much as we would hope and not as much as I think a lot of people think. Where we've seen more accuracy is when someone has consent and has a direct relationship. We've just been looking at the match rates go down. We've investigated a few different ways, both through validation, through surveys, just looking all the way down through to performance. And you realize that it's eroding very quickly.
This podcast is all about being really brave and going above and beyond and taking some risks. Is there a certain area when you've investigated the death of the third-party cookie or actual things that you've done where it's like, gosh, this is really stepping out of our comfort zone here. This is actually taking a risk here. Can you share some examples of that?
It's a bit of a risk when you have, as an advertiser, for a long time leveraged third parties to provide insight about your customers. You realize that data is pretty inaccurate or at least confusing. To walk away from that cold turkey, just say, all right, we're done. We can't do this anymore because it's a misleading compass signal.
Mm.
Your compass is now off and you're not sure. Let's say 20 or 30% of the time it's pointed north and you're going north, but 70, 80% of the time it's not, but you're not sure when that is. That's risky to continue down that path. But I think to stop doing what you've always done or what you've done for the last few years is a risk as a marketer, and wandering off back into a space where you say, all right, I'm going to have to maybe reassess my tactics and how I spend my money, where my money goes. For a long time, people were very excited about this idea of personalization and one-to-one marketing. It's like that carpet gets ripped out from underneath you. So like venturing off into, all right, well, we're going to go back into contextual and trying to, reevaluate your marketing tool set. It's it's a bit risky to just stop. And I think that's something that we've been endeavoring to do here very recently, is just stop using this data that we know is a misleading signal.
Do you feel at all that you're taking like one step back to take two steps forward because you're using tactics of yesteryear, or does it feel like it's really forward?
No, I think I don't know. I think it's natural evolution here, right? I've been around digital for a long time and I've been around marketing for a long time, and things evolve, but there's certain principles that have held true for a very long time. But just thinking about consumer behavior, and it changes over time. So you have to adapt. You have to evolve with that. You have to evolve with the sentiment of consumers. You have to change your approach and your tactics and learn from it. I think it's an adventure. I don't think we've really gone backwards. We've maybe had to go back to the basics and not lose sight of what got you started. Being more relevant to a broader set of consumers is a good thing. Too narrow with your messaging, you might miss out on potential consumers. So I just think that we've got to continue to evolve, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's forcing us to evolve.
No, I agree. And consumers have raised their hand and they're loud and clear that they don't want to be tracked. They feel that they deserve their privacy. It hasn't happened overnight. It's been happening for many years. It's just marketers are now becoming more and more, awake to, what consumers are saying. And someone like you, who's been working on this for over a year, you're at the forefront of it, where you speak to some marketers and agencies, and they're like, I'll worry about it when I need to worry about it, but for now, it is working for me. So kudos for you for taking that step, which really leads to my next question. So you have been working at it for a while. Have you seen any impact on your marketing objectives and goals because you've actually turned the dial a little bit in this consumer privacy way?
We've probably gotten more realistic when it comes to what are we hoping to get from this advertising campaign, right? Zeroing in on what the objective is and not trying to give ourselves some false hope, right? Like when you realize that your compass is off and you've been going in the wrong direction, so you just got to stop and reassess and say, all right, what direction should we be going in? What should this be doing? What's realistic to expect a consumer to do through an ad that we expose them to, and whether or not they interact with those ads? We've probably had to take a step back and look at it and reassess and then evolve a few things, maybe get more clarity and focus, and also think about our own internal systems, like how well are they connected? So when a consumer does come to our website, are we giving them a clear path to purchase if they want to purchase, or explore if they want to explore, and making sure that our ads are taking people to the kinds of content that they want. So there's some things that I think it's allowed us to focus on some other things that probably were important in the first place, and we may not have given them as much attention as we could have.
Any mistakes along the way where you're like, looking back, 2020, like in hindsight, you would change?
As we started down this path of looking at the death of the cookie, we knew we wanted to do some certain things. But I think the only regret is I think we should have and could have moved faster in a few areas, maybe not spend as much time focusing on one-to-one messaging on the web and focused more on building ads and thinking very contextual. Yeah, there's been a few things I think we could have started a little sooner, but we were waiting for some data to validate. And I think enough of us probably knew it was going to come back the way it did.
Yeah, I think what caused a lot of the delay too is that Google Chrome makes this announcement that in 2 years they're going to start deprecating the cookie. And so then you go, all right, so I can wait 2 years. And I just think that Google will come up with some other type of solution. But what you're bringing up today is that it's not all about Google. And the third party cookie is going away in a lot of other media areas, a lot of other tech, and which makes it difficult to do the matching, makes it difficult to do the personalization that you're talking about. And so you cannot wait until Google has some solution that'll be here in a year or whenever it is. You actually have to take that step. And it's a great example that like you took a step a year ago and you're like, that wasn't even early enough. So I just imagine the marketers that aren't taking the steps now, they really need to get ahead of it. You've brought your media in-house. Can you tell us about that process a little bit and different steps that you made that were quote unquote brave?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Prior to HP, I worked in the ad agency world and pretty heavily focused on digital and technology and all that. And in 2015, I was recruited to come into HP to build out our approach to technology and data when it comes to digital and to start bringing in the technology infrastructure, if you will, the relationships with ad tech and take control of that data and those technology decisions as a brand. And it was a bit forward thinking at the time. Not everybody was doing it. Most people were still relying on their external ad agency to manage those technology relationships. You couldn't get that scale. You couldn't operationalize it, et cetera. There was a lot of, I'm not sure that's going to work, but HP was all for it from the start and realized that it was a good foundation step. Whether you bring your media in-house or not, like taking control of your data and your technology decisions, especially with the ad tech, there's a lot of expensive technology out there that you can easily be spending millions of dollars and not realize you're not getting a lot of value. You're paying it directly, you tend to scrutinize a little bit more. That was the first step. And realizing that at some point we may want to bring the media buying in house. To do that, we had to start with the data and technology as a foundation, because that tends to take a long time, and it actually did. It took us a while to get everybody on the same stack globally when we're dealing with 40 or 50 global markets. Like getting everybody aligned, getting everybody on a common set of standards and practices takes time. So that was the first step. Then we started building out a data science practice so that we could analyze and start to think about what's going on with the data in our campaign. And then there was a natural progression to, all right, well, let's take a look at the benefits of bringing the activation in-house. We had the support of now 2 different CMOs through the process, and I think that was critical. I don't think it would have succeeded had we not had the support of the CMO. One of the key things, I think, at the core of it is we're all paid by HP, so we're all HP employees. We truly do care about how things work. We're not removed and we're not fragmented with our attention. Spent years and years on the ad agency side. The reality is you typically work on multiple clients. So only so much of your brain power can go to any one client, and you may want to be able to give them more time. You just don't have it. And I think having it focused and behind the wall, if you will, has been good. But it was definitely a slow process. The advice that I got along the way was do it one thing at a time and make sure you do it right. And I think we've been able to do that.
Yeah. How big is that media department? What was the size of it before, and how many did you have to hire to bring everybody in house?
That's a good question. I don't know the global numbers from North America standpoint. We're about 20 or 25 people, plus or minus here and there. And that includes everything: ad operations, finance, reporting, activation, etc. I would say we're scaled up and we service every line of business we do. There's been a cost savings with that. I necessarily if it equates to headcount savings, but there's been a cost savings. There's been a performance improvement. We still work with our external agency for planning and for certain large investment buys up front. They have a strong media strategy and planning practice. Most agencies are really good at that. So that's where we've been able to find a good partnership.
As we wrap up the interview, just the 3 kind of last questions. What are your best hopes for the future of marketing and advertising?
I think at the end of the day, customer satisfaction, right? So if we think about what drives business is having satisfied customers, is we make good products, they buy them, they're happy with them. And I think from a marketing and advertising standpoint, it's making sure that we have satisfied customers when it comes to our advertising and marketing, right? We're part of that customer satisfaction. If our ads are annoying, our marketing is annoying, or it's not respecting their privacy or not being interesting, my hope is that we start moving away from the bad compass, as we talked about it, and back to some of the basics about let's just make sure our ads are really good, that they do a really good job, that they're shoppable, that they're interesting and relevant to our audience. And then from a marketing standpoint, that we practice what we preach, right? Let's make sure that our marketing is respectful of our customers as they come and engage with us, that we provide them something of value, and that we don't start skirting the rules around privacy and targeting. Let's make sure we live by the standards. And I think that's going to produce good customer satisfaction. The root of a lot of this change is a consumer's desire to have control of their data and their privacy, and we all want that. So I think as marketers, my hope is that we evolve in a good way, that we give consumers their privacy and consent, and we figure out how to adapt around that. Like we figure out how to adapt around consumer behavior, and I think that's my hope, is that we can evolve.
Yeah, well, sounds like you're taking all the steps to do that. And if you wouldn't mind finishing this sentence, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't started.
Ooh, I think, for me, I can trace back my current job to myself raising my hand to work on a new and very challenging business opportunity when I was on the ad agency side. The moment was I volunteered to sign up to work on a pitch for the Microsoft account. And it was a big, scary endeavor because it was going to be a lot of work. And I just remember I was like, I'll take it. I'll go after it. And I think it was one of the best decisions I made. This idea of brave, right? It's sometimes you got to take risks. You got to raise your hand, and you never know what doors are going to open down the road as a result of just stepping out and taking a risk, or stepping out and going after a challenge.
Yep, it's not easy to step out of your comfort zone and do something new and challenging, which you've done, and it makes you where you are today. Well, John, thank you so much for being on our podcast. We really appreciate it, and until next time, thanks. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Brave Marketer podcast. Hope you enjoyed us talking to John about the death of the third-party cookie, as well as how he brought all his media in-house. So we have 7 more to go in season 1, and looking forward to being in your ears again next Monday. In the meantime, if you have a brand, product, or service that you'd like to get in front of a valuable audience, consider Brave, the world's first global ad platform built on privacy. Currently, we have 25+ million monthly active users and growing every day. Visit brave.com/brave ads or email us at adsales@brave.com and let us know you're a podcast listener, and we'll see what we can do for you.